Female Vietnamese POWs were shocked when American soldiers set them free. Quang Tri Province, Vietnam, March 1969. The monsoon rain hammered down as Nguyen Thi Lan crouched in the bamboo thicket, listening to American helicopters circling overhead. At 26, she had served 2 years as a Viet Cong field medic, treating wounded fighters in jungle hospitals with almost no supplies. Now, surrounded by US soldiers during a sweep operation, she reached for her pistol and calculated her odds. 3 bullets. They had rifles, grenades, and air support. The mathematics were simple. She raised her hands above the bamboo. Everything the political officers had taught her said this was the moment her nightmare would begin. American soldiers were animals, they'd said, torturers, rapists, better to die fighting than fall into their hands. As the young American sergeant approached, weapon raised, Lan closed her eyes and prepared for the beating she knew would come first. Instead, hands patted her down, professionally, removed her weapons, then helped her stand. One soldier even retrieved her medical satchel from the mud and handed it back to her. The sergeant spoke into his radio while another offered her a canteen. Lan stared at the water. This had to be the trick. She didn't take it. The helicopter ride to Da Nang Air Base took 30 minutes. 30 minutes for Lan to rehearse the interrogation resistance techniques she'd been taught. Say nothing but name and unit. Endure the pain. Die with honor if necessary. When they landed, they took her to a medical tent. A female American corporal with tired eyes and brown hair gestured for Lan to sit on an examination table. Her name tape read Mitchell. She conducted a professional medical exam, checking Lan's vitals, examining the infected cut on her arm that had been bothering her for weeks. "This needs antibiotics," Mitchell said in broken Vietnamese, showing a vial of penicillin. Lan stared. She had seen penicillin maybe 3 times in 2 years of VC medical work. It was rarer than gold, reserved for high-ranking cadre. The idea that Americans would waste it on an enemy prisoner seemed impossible. Mitchell cleaned the wound with stinging antiseptic, administered the injection, and wrapped it in impossibly white gauze. Then she produced a C ration can, opened it to reveal meat and beans, and handed Lan a spoon. "Hungry?" she mimed. Lan couldn't remember her last full meal. Yesterday morning, a rice ball with salt. The day before, nothing. Last week, her unit had found a dead water buffalo and stretched it across 3 days. But this had to be poisoned, or drugged, or just cruelty, offering food before snatching it away. Mitchell seemed to understand. She opened her own ration, took a bite, smiled, and gestured again. Lan's hands trembled as she ate. The food tasted like salt and fat and survival. She waited for someone to strike the spoon from her hand, to laugh, to begin the real torture. It never came. Then Mitchell brought something else. A small metal cup releasing a smell Lan hadn't experienced in so long she almost didn't recognize it. Coffee. Real Vietnamese coffee. "Ca phê," Mitchell said, her pronunciation terrible, but the gesture clear. "I asked how to make it right. Figured you'd want something from home." Lan took the cup with shaking hands. The coffee was hot, almost burning, but she didn't care. For a moment she was back in her father's house in Hue before the war, before the world split into sides that demanded choosing. She finished the coffee and waited for the cruelty she'd been promised her entire adult life. Mitchell simply smiled and said, "Rest now." That night, Lan lay on a clean cot with 5 other female prisoners. They whispered urgently in Vietnamese, trying to make sense of their treatment. "It's psychological warfare," insisted Pham Thi Mai, a defiant 22-year-old radio operator. "They treat us well to extract information, then execute us." "But why waste medicine if they plan to kill us?" another woman asked. "Because Americans are stupid," Mai said with certainty. "They have so much they don't understand scarcity." Lan said nothing. She touched the clean bandage on her arm, thought about the coffee, remembered Mitchell's gentle hands. She had spent 2 years fighting Americans, seeing their bombs destroy villages, watching soldiers die from American bullets. But she had never actually met an American before today. Outside, the base hummed with nighttime activity. Generators powered electric lights that turned darkness into day. Music played somewhere. Vehicles moved on paved roads. The base seemed like a small city, organized, efficient, and possibly wealthy. How were they losing to such people? The political officers said American soldiers were cowards, their equipment inferior, their society weak and decadent. But Lan had just seen soldiers moving with professional precision, helicopters that seemed like science fiction, medical facilities better equipped than any hospital in North Vietnam. For the first time since joining the revolution, Lan felt something she didn't immediately recognize because it had been absent so long. Doubt. Da Nang Air Base, April-May 1969. Within days, routine established itself, and the routine's ordinariness disturbed Lan most deeply. Each morning at 600 hours, American soldiers brought breakfast to the prisoner compound. Not the thin rice gruel or stale bread crust Lan had expected, but actual food, scrambled eggs somehow kept fresh in refrigerated storage, bread made from white flour that was soft and sweet, fresh fruit that hadn't been scavenged from jungle trees. The portions were larger than what Vietnamese soldiers received, even in the North Vietnamese Army regular units. The meal schedule alone was shocking. 3 times daily, food arrived with mechanical regularity. In 2 years with the VC, Lan had grown. Accustomed to eating once a day if she was lucky, sometimes going 2 or 3 days with nothing but stream water and whatever could be foraged. Here, prisoners ate better than she had eaten as a free civilian in Hanoi before joining the revolution. Lan was assigned to work in the base hospital under Corporal Sarah Mitchell's supervision. The Americans were overwhelmed with wounded coming in from operations across Thibacourt, chronically understaffed despite their apparent abundance of everything else. "You don't have to help," Mitchell explained through Sergeant Tran, a South Vietnamese interpreter. "Geneva Convention says we can't force prisoners to do military work, but if you're willing, we could use it. People are dying, and we need every trained hand we can get." Mai called Lan a collaborator for agreeing. "Every American you save will go back into the field and kill more Vietnamese," she hissed that night in their tent. "Their blood will be on your hands." Lan had no answer. Mai was right by a certain logic, but she was also wrong in a way Lan couldn't fully articulate yet. She was a medic first, trained in Hanoi's medical school before ideology had fully consumed the curriculum. She had sworn an oath to heal the sick and wounded. Did that oath recognize national boundaries? Did it disappear because someone wore a different uniform? And more troubling still, if she refused to help and American soldiers died for lack of care, would their blood not also be on her hands? Was there any choice in this war that didn't lead to someone's death? Working in the hospital revealed American medical capability that bordered on miraculous. X-ray machines that could see inside the body without surgery. Surgical equipment gleaming under bright electric lights that never flickered or failed. Refrigeration units storing blood for transfusions, a technology Lan had only read about in outdated medical textbooks. Antibiotics in such quantities that nurses stored them in cabinets like rice. Morphine administered freely to manage pain rather than hoarded for only the most extreme cases. The abundance was almost obscene. In VC field hospitals, Lan had performed amputations without anesthesia, using instruments sterilized over campfires. She had watched young fighters die from infections that could have been cured with a single penicillin injection. She had held dying soldiers' hands because that was the only comfort she could offer when medicine ran out. Here, Americans threw away bandages after single use. They had machines that monitored heartbeats electronically. They had oxygen tanks, IV drips, even air conditioning to keep patients comfortable in the Vietnamese heat. On her 3rd day, Lan watched Mitchell and an American surgeon save a North Vietnamese soldier whose leg had been nearly severed by a mine. The young man was clearly NVA regular army, not VC. His uniform bore the insignia of a unit that had ambushed American patrols near the DMZ. He would recover, return to North Vietnam as a repatriated prisoner, and almost certainly fight Americans again. They saved him anyway. 4 hours of surgery, 2 units of blood. Enough antibiotics to treat 100 VC fighters. They saved his leg and probably his life. Why? Lan asked Mitchell during a quiet moment, using her improving English. He is your enemy. He will kill Americans. Mitchell looked exhausted from 16-hour duty. He's a patient right now. That's all that matters. In my hospital in jungle, Lan said carefully. We have no medicine like this. We watch people die from infection you cure in 3 days. Why Americans have so much and we have nothing? Mitchell's expression softened with something like pity. I don't know. None of this makes sense to me anymore. The letter from home arrived in May through Red Cross channels. Lan's hand shook opening it. 3 months since capture, and she'd heard nothing from her family in Hue. She had written twice through official channels, telling them she was alive, treated humanely, working as a medic in an American hospital. She didn't know if those letters had reached them, or if they'd been intercepted and destroyed by authorities on either side who might not want such information spreading. Her younger sister Lynn had written back. The letter was short, written in careful script that suggested Lynn had laboured over every word, knowing that many eyes, both American and Vietnamese, would read it before it reached Lan's hands. Elder sister, we received your letter and thank the ancestors you are alive. Mother cried for 3 days with joy when your words reached us. We had assumed the worst when we heard about the American offensive near Quang Tri province. Life here is difficult. The bombing continues, though not as bad as during Tet last year. The market has little food, and what exists is very expensive. Mother's cough worsens, but medicine is impossible to find. We heard the hospitals are only for party members and soldiers now. Common people must rely on traditional herbs and prayers. Your letter said you work as a medic for the Americans. At first we thought propaganda forced you to write such things, that they stood over you with guns making you say what they wanted. But your handwriting cannot be faked, and you included Father's coffee story that only our family would know. Sister, we don't understand. You wrote that Americans give you 3 meals daily, that they have medicine healing infections in days, that you sleep in a bed with clean sheets and pillows. This cannot be true, can it? We were told American prisoners are tortured and starved, that they die in cages. We were told they are monsters who kill for pleasure. If what you write is true, then what else have we been told that is false? Please write again soon. We pray for your safety and your return home, though we fear what you will find here when the war ends. The city is not what you remember. Your devoted sister, Lynn. Lan read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and pressed it against her chest. She sat on her cot and for the first time since capture, allowed herself to cry. The mathematics had become undeniable. While she ate 3 meals daily, her family struggled to find food. While American doctors used penicillin casually, her mother suffered with a treatable cough that might become pneumonia. While Lan slept in clean sheets, her sister huddled in a house that shook with bombing, and the bombing came from the people treating Lan better than her own government ever had. Mai found her crying. Letter from home? She asked, voice softer than usual. Lan nodded. Mine too, Mai said quietly. My brother wrote. Our village was bombed. 70 people died, including our aunt and her children. She paused. He asked if the Americans are really as evil as we were taught. What did you tell him? I don't know what to tell him, Mai admitted. I watched them save that NVA soldier last week, the one who killed 2 Marines before they captured him. They saved his life like it mattered. She looked at Lan with eyes that had lost their certainty. Sister, I'm starting to think we don't know anything true about this war. The friendship with Sarah Mitchell developed slowly, built on night shifts when casualties were light and they could talk. Mitchell's Vietnamese improved. Lan's English became conversational. Why did you volunteer for this? Lan asked one night while sharing coffee Mitchell had learned to make the Vietnamese way. Mitchell stared into her cup before answering. My brother, Michael, killed at Khe Sanh last year. I wanted to come here and hurt people back. Make the enemy suffer. So you volunteer for POW duty? I volunteered to work with Vietnamese prisoners so I could hate them up close, Mitchell said bluntly. So I could see the faces of people who killed Michael and feel justified. And now? Mitchell laughed bitterly. Now I make coffee for a woman who probably treated VC soldiers who killed my brother. Now I don't know what I feel. Lan understood the confusion, the betrayal of certainty. My father was killed in Hue during Tet, she said quietly. American artillery. He died instantly. I joined the revolution to avenge him. God, Mitchell whispered. I'm sorry. Why? You didn't kill him. The war killed him. Same war that killed your brother. Lan sipped coffee. Sarah, can I ask you something? Sure. In America, can people criticize government, protest the war? Mitchell looked surprised. Yeah, all the time. Massive anti-war protests, thousands march in streets demanding we pull out. And these people are not arrested, not executed. Arrested sometimes if protests get violent, but executed? No. Protected speech under our constitution. Lan tried to process this. In North Vietnam, any war criticism was treason. People disappeared into re-education camps for less. But how can your country fight when your own people oppose it? That's a really good question, Mitchell said. I think maybe that's why we're losing. You're not losing, Lan gestured around them. Look at this base, your weapons, medicine, food. How can you lose? You can have all the weapons in the world and still lose if you're fighting for wrong reasons. Half of America doesn't even know why we're here. Da Nang Air Base, November 1969. The newspaper arrived like a grenade. Lan saw American nurses and doctors gathering around it, faces showing shock and disgust. She asked Sarah what happened. Mitchell had gone pale. My Lai, they're reporting the My Lai massacre from last year. American soldiers killed 300 to 500 Vietnamese civilians. Women, children, elderly. Just murdered them. Lan took the newspaper and began reading. Charlie Company, Lieutenant Kelly, March 16th, 1968. Villagers herded into ditches and machine-gunned. Children shot fleeing. Women raped before being killed. This is what I've been fighting against, Lan said quietly. What political officers told us about American war crimes. I know, Mitchell said hollowly. I'm ashamed of my country right now. But Lan kept reading. The massacre had been covered up 18 months, only exposed because an American helicopter pilot named Hugh Thompson intervened during the massacre, tried to stop it, reported it to superiors. Only came to light because American journalists investigated and published despite military resistance. Sarah, Lan said slowly. In Vietnam, if soldiers committed crimes like this, no one would ever know. Government would cover up forever. But your government, your newspapers expose this. Your people are angry. You're prosecuting soldiers responsible. That doesn't make it okay. No, Lan agreed. But it means something that you're trying to hold them accountable. That night, Lan wrote to her sister. I read today about American soldiers who committed terrible crimes in my live village. Details are horrific, but I must tell you something more troubling. I also learned about the Hue massacre. During Tet, political officers told us they executed ARVN officers and government officials. Now I learn the party executed 2,800 civilians. Teachers, students, merchants, priests, mass graves. Sister, both sides have committed atrocities. Both sides have lied. But here is the difference. Americans are prosecuting My Lai soldiers. Their newspapers expose the crime. Their people protest, demanding justice. They are ashamed and trying to prevent it happening again. What will happen to cadres who executed 2,800 in our city? Nothing. It will be denied, covered up, erased. Anyone asking questions will be re-educated, or worse. I cannot choose between two sides that both commit atrocities and both lie. I can only choose truth, and truth is the first casualty in war. Your awakening sister, Lan. 2 weeks later, Len's response arrived, written in code their father had taught them. Our neighbour's family was taken for re-education. Her father criticised food shortages and someone reported him. They took the whole family. No one knows where. Mother grows more ill. Hospital refused treatment because she's not party member. A doctor wanted to help, but was transferred away the next day. I've begun teaching myself English using a dictionary. I want to read your letters without showing anyone else. Sister, I'm afraid. Not of American bombs anymore. Of what happens if we win the war. Of what they'll do to people like us who have questions. Lan sat in the hospital break room staring at the coded message. Sarah found her an hour later. Bad news? My sister is learning English so she can read my letters without censors knowing, Lan said. She's afraid of what happens if the North wins. What do you think will happen? Re-education camps, political purges, punishment for anyone who questioned the party or befriended Americans. Lan looked at Mitchell with sudden clarity. If I go back, they'll say I'm a traitor for working here, for becoming friends with you, for seeing Americans as human. You don't have to go back, Mitchell said quietly. The words hung between them. Lan had heard about Cheo Hoi, the open arms defection program. But defection meant abandoning her family, never seeing her mother or sister again, admitting everything she'd fought for was based on lies. I don't know who I am anymore, Lan whispered. I was a revolutionary, a patriot, a healer fighting to liberate my country. Now I drink coffee with the occupier and save lives of soldiers who kill my people. What does that make me? Human, Mitchell said. Makes you human. January 1970. Lan requested a meeting with the camp commander. Colonel James Morrison listened as she explained her decision. I'm not defecting because I believe America is good and revolution is bad, she said clearly. Both sides have committed atrocities. Both sides have lied. But I've observed one critical difference. What's that? Americans have freedom to question their government without execution. American journalists expose my lie, even though military tried hiding it. American people protest, demanding accountability. This freedom to seek truth, this is what I want to protect. Not American imperialism, not capitalism, just the right to know truth and speak it without dying. Morrison nodded. You understand requesting asylum means you can't return. You'll likely never see your family again. I understand, Lan's voice wavered. But if I return, I'll be sent to re-education camp for collaborating, punished for learning my government lied, forbidden from telling others what I've seen. What do you want to do? Work as translator and cultural advisor. Help Americans understand Vietnamese people. Help Vietnamese understand Americans aren't devils. Work toward peace. Not victory for either side, just peace. That'll make you unpopular with everyone. Truth usually does. The other Vietnamese prisoners stopped speaking to Lan. Mai refused to acknowledge her presence. You have betrayed everything we fought for, Mai hissed one evening. When the North wins, and we will win, people like you will be first against the wall. If the North wins, Lan said quietly, and if questioning government means execution, what exactly have we won? Mai had no answer. March 1970. Lan's asylum was approved. She would be sent to the United States for resettlement, probably California, where Vietnamese refugees already lived. From there, she would begin life as a translator, cultural advisor, living bridge between warring nations. The night before leaving Da Nang, Sarah brought Lan a gift, a small metal container of Vietnamese coffee beans. Figured you'd want to take something from home, Sarah said, wherever you end up. Lan opened it and breathed in the smell, rich, dark, full of memories. Her father teaching her to make it properly. Mornings in Hue before the war. The first cup Sarah gave her after capture, when she still believed Americans were monsters. Thank you, Lan said, voice thick. This means more than you know. Coffee brought us together, figured it should go with you. That night, Lan stood outside the hospital, looking at stars. Somewhere under these same stars, her mother and sister lived in Hue, not knowing if she was alive. Somewhere the boy she'd treated for dysentery was recovering, still believing lies about American devils. Somewhere, Vietnamese and American soldiers were dying in a war both sides claimed was worth the sacrifice. Lan touched the container in her pocket. She thought about her journey from revolutionary to prisoner to defector, about certainties lost and harder truths gained. She wasn't sure if she'd made the right choice, only that she'd made the only choice her conscience allowed. Tomorrow she would leave Vietnam, but she would carry Vietnam always, in her language, her memories, and the coffee that tasted like home. Orange County, California, 1985. 15 years had passed since Nguyen Thi Lan stepped off a military transport at Travis Air Force Base and began her American life. She'd worked as a translator for refugee resettlement, helped thousands of Vietnamese boat people, eventually became a professor of Southeast Asian history. Through Red Cross and State Department channels, she'd finally contacted her family. Lynn's letter arrived on a Tuesday. Elder sister, 15 years since we heard from you. We thought you were dead. Mother is elderly now and not well, but knowing you're alive has given her new strength. Life here is difficult but stable. The war ended 10 years ago. We won, but victory looks different than promised. Still poverty, still food shortages, still fear of saying the wrong thing. Many people have left on boats trying to reach America. Some succeed. Many die at sea or are captured by pirates. But they'd rather risk death than stay. What does that say about our great victory? I teach students the official history I must teach to keep my job. But sometimes late at night I read your letters from the war that I kept hidden all these years. And I wonder what history would look like if we were allowed to tell truth. You wrote once that truth is the first casualty of war. I understand now. Truth is still a casualty here, even though war ended long ago. Your devoted sister, Lynn. Lan sat in her kitchen, Lynn's letter in one hand, a cup of Vietnamese coffee in the other. The smell brought back everything. The moment Sarah first gave her coffee after capture, the conversations over midnight cups during hospital shifts, the container Sarah gave her the night before she left Vietnam. She had lost her country but kept her truth. She had abandoned her family but found her conscience. She had betrayed her revolution but saved her humanity. The coffee tasted bitter and sweet at once, like memory, like exile, like home,